Yibo was so freaking handsome in this show. Hi everyone, this is me and this is my very first video solely about Wang Yibo. So we've had a few exciting months recently with the release of two of his movies, Wu Ming or Hidden Blade and 长空之王 or Born to Fly. I went to watch these movies solely to watch Yibo and this is my take on them. So let's start with Wu Ming or Hidden Blade. Now it didn't come to the theatres here in Singapore, I don't know why, and I had to wait until it was released on Youku's platform. So the very first time I watched it, because I couldn't wait and I couldn't figure out how to cast it to TV, I watched it on my tiny little phone and that was not the best experience. But the third time I watched it, I was in a very good frame of mind. I had done some reading up into the situation surrounding the movie and I had a great time. So to put it very simply, this is an espionage and political intrigue movie, and this is the period between 1941 and 1946 called the War of Resistance or the Second Sino-Japanese War. The entire plot is very mysterious. It's all about, who's a spy, who's not a spy, which side are they on, and are they good or bad. So this movie is led by a wonderful cast of actors, the first and foremost being Tony Leung as Director He. And the second lead is Yibo as Secretary Ye. Now I can't really mention all the performances, but I particularly enjoyed Eric Wang, Wang Chuanjun, who plays Mr. Wang, who is sort of like a sidekick together with Secretary Ye, Yibo's character, and they're sort of like the Tweedledee and Tweedledum of the show and provide a little bit of comic relief in what is otherwise a very dark movie. There's also a fantastic performance by Hiroyuki Mori as General Watanabe. So the movie is shot in Shanghainese, Cantonese, Mandarin and Japanese, and I thought it lent such an interesting linguistic texture to the movie. Yibo did a really good job with Shanghainese and Japanese. I don't normally associate him as someone who is particularly good or interested in languages, but the way he performed was very convincing and there wasn't anything awkward or jarring when he used these languages. So this is an art house stylized film noir movie and it uses a lot of flash forwards, flashbacks, intricate characters, complicated storylines. It is very elliptical and mysterious in its dialogues and its scenes so that it never really gives you the full picture at any point, really gives you tiny little bits that you have to put together. The overall effect is of a very dangerous and menacing time in China's history when everyone is sort of walking on a knife's edge. And I love the cinematography so much. I thought it was so beautiful. And I think this is one aspect of the movie that critics generally agree about. Yibo looked very handsome. I do like that slicked back hair look. But he didn't look overly handsome because I think that's not the point of the movie. And in fact, in many scenes, he looks very drawn and very tired with, dark shadows under his eyes. And for some reason, they kept lighting him in this very green light, which made him look very sallow and tired. But maybe that sort of enhanced the lifestyle of his character. But man, I love a literal smoking hot Yibo. When the still pictures were first released of Yibo smoking in this movie, I was totally bowled over because even if it isn't politically correct, personally, I find handsome men who smoke very sexy. This movie is pretty violent with a lot of bloodshed and fighting. And in some ways, what makes it worse is that they take the violence right to the edge and then they leave the rest to your imagination. I found it so thrilling. Yibo is particularly good at fighting scenes. I mean, we all remember Lan Wangji and his great core strength. The same thing here. He's very good at blocking. He plays off so well with Tony Leung in this epic fight scene. And he's so convincing. You can see that he throws his entire body and soul into it. His interactions with Director Ye and Mr. Wang and the General were very nuanced at some point, but at other times, he was a little bit wooden and not as successful. This movie really makes you work for the payoff at the end. So it needs a lot of attention and commitment for you to really grasp all the details. Overall, it is a very dark film with very serious themes, and even the ending is pretty bleak, which, you know, not everyone enjoys. So there's a deep sense of patriotism that runs through this movie, but that's kind of true of a lot of spy and war movies from any culture or any movie industry. I expected it to be a lot more overt and jingoistic, and I was pleasantly surprised that the director Cheng managed to strike this very delicate balance without overtly siding with one side. And I think that's very hard to do because war is innately very complex. Overall, I really like this movie and I give it a very high mark because I found it entertaining, but more than that, it made me think and it made me want to learn more about a very significant period in China's history. And this made for a very enjoyable movie experience. What about Yibo's performance? So going into this movie, I was a little bit worried. He is pretty inexperienced, you know, right at the start of his acting career. Doesn't really have a lot of impressive acting work behind him, no matter what the crazy fans say. And he's up against veteran actors like Tony Leung and Zhou Xun. I thought he held his own pretty well. So while it was a little bit inconsistent, I think it holds a lot of promise for the future. So if you go online, you will find a lot of reviews about this movie, ranging from scathing to, you know, fawning over Yibo. I say watch this movie and decide for yourself. On to our second movie, which is长空之王or Born to Fly. I've seen it twice in the movies. And my god, I love this movie so much. When I came back from the theatre, I told my husband I had as good a time watching this show as I did watching Top Gun Maverick. Because these two movies are very similar. Very action-packed, lots of good-looking men, nice aerial shots, very scenic surroundings, and a very simple but enjoyable plot. So it was fantastically entertaining. And Yibo's character Lei Yu has the main arc. He is this young, arrogant, daredevil fighter pilot who gets picked to be in an elite force that tests out state-of-the-art military aircraft and stealth fighters. So of course he comes up against a rival fighter pilot, and he is mentored by someone who is older and has experience in this field. He faces some difficulties that bring him down, and then, you know, he learns a lot of life lessons, proves himself, and then all is well with the world. So it's that kind of plot. So the dialogue between the characters is pretty sparse, and there is very little of this, you know, brotherly bonding that you see in Top Gun. Because again, this is not a movie that stresses the individuals. So the patriotism and propaganda are pretty strong in this movie, and you can tell from the opening credits because for a good 5 minutes, all you see are the names of sponsors and organizations for this movie because it definitely needed a lot of funding and state sanction because it is about the military. So some of the speeches were kind of jingoistic. Again, nothing unexpected. So in this movie, 4 people made the biggest impression on me. The first, of course, is Yibo, whom I'll talk about later, and then Hu Jun, who is a veteran actor who plays the mentoring commander Zhang Ting. He was really, really good. And the third actor was Yosh Yu as Deng Fang. Oh my god, he was so handsome. I couldn't believe it. I was like, who is this guy? He's so handsome. And he looks so wonderful in this movie. But the sad thing is that when I googled him on the internet, I thought his pictures were not as stunning. He was just amazing eye candy, second only to my Wang Yibo, but you know, I'm biased. So there's not much to say about the production and cinematography except that it was very good. For an action movie, it delivered all that it had to do with nice shots, good sound effects. I'm not really an expert in this area, so I can't tell you whether, you know, something like Top Gun is superior, but to me, as a casual moviegoer, I thought it was pretty good. So this is a real heart-pumping movie, very easy to watch. It's one of those shows that you can enjoy without needing to engage your brain too much, unlike for Wu Ming. So Yibo was so freaking handsome in this show. He was absolutely gorgeous. I couldn't take my eyes off him. I loved the clean-cut look. He's really buff. He's really tan. You know, he's muscly. He looks so good in a flight suit. And his bearing is so beautiful that he looked even taller in this movie. And Yibo is known to be very slender, have a very narrow face. He's very fair and in some ways a little bit delicate, but not in this movie. He's so manly in this movie. It is a far, far, far cry from idol Yibo. His jawline was so amazing. I mean, it could cut through steak like butter. And even though this character is simpler and not as much of a stretch as Secretary Ye, I felt him get really into Lei Yu's skin, and particularly in part that he plays against Zhou Dongyu as Shen Tianran, the military doctor, and they have this sort of budding romance. Even though this had very little screen time, I felt that Yibo showed a certain tenderness, a certain tentativeness, shyness, sweetness and sincerity towards his love interest that I haven't really seen in any of his other shows, where I thought it wasn't so believable. In this one, he's really believable. So this is probably the best acting that Yibo has done with a female actress, except maybe with Zhou Xun, but I'll come to that later. If you're looking for romance in this movie, there is a whisker hair bit more romance in this movie than in Hidden Blade. But you will still be disappointed because, you know, I don't think it even totals 10 minutes. In fact, this is probably the biggest difference between Born to Fly and Top Gun. In both Top Gun movies, the original and Maverick, the entire action is about Maverick and about fighter pilots, but it revolves around a central romantic story. Whereas in this story, the romantic story is a tiny, tiny, tiny little sideline. So of course there's a lot of patriotism that runs through this movie and a lot of soft propaganda, but to me this is the same as movies of this genre from any other movie industry. It's not any better or worse just because it comes from China. And just as watching Top Gun will not fundamentally change my views on the US or its military, watching Born to Fly is not going to change my mind about China either, because in the end it's just a movie. So my final thoughts after watching these two movies is that, first of all, what you get out of them really depends on your expectations going in. I went for Yibo, I had a good time, and I don't think that my time was wasted. That's good enough for me. But I do have one main criticism about these two movies, which has been pointed out by many critics, which is the lack of female roles, or the very sad state of female roles. So I'm going to talk about them a little bit more here. So in Hidden Blade, 3 roles stood out to me the most. The first was Maggie Jiang Shuying. They lit her so well, they dressed her immaculately, it totally fit her role. It took my breath away. But she was on screen for, I think, 5 minutes. The second was Zhang Jingyi, who plays Miss Fang, who is a dancer, who was also Secretary Ye's fiancée. And she has a slightly more developed storyline, but again, maybe 7 minutes on screen. She was so pretty, and with that 1940s styling with the coiffed hair and the black cheongsam, I mean, she was really stunning and very fitting for her role. And last but not least is Zhou Xun, whom I've said several times on my channel is my favorite Chinese actress. So she is slightly older and she played Miss Chen. She's a veteran and a very well-respected actress. And I think she had maybe maximum 15 minutes on screen. So it's quite sad that these roles were not expanded and fleshed out a little bit more. A bit of a side story, because Zhou Xun and Yibo actually have quite a close working relationship. They are both Chanel ambassadors from China, and they have done 2 short films together. So one was called Vrai Où, where Yibo plays a bartender and Zhou Xun plays a chanteuse, and they have a romantic liaison, and I love it. I think that Yibo is so sweet as this young man who has a thing for this older woman. Yibo was also with Zhou Xun in a second Chanel short film called 我的朋友, or All Tomorrow's Parties. This is the one where he is styled to look extremely awkward and unattractive. And I don't know why this particular short film didn't get as much press when it came out. So I'll put the links to both these short films in the description box. And for those of you who follow Yibo's work, you will know that he and Zhou Xun both attended the Chanel cruise show in LA recently, and he was seen holding Zhou Xun's hands when they went skating to give her some stability. It was really sweet of him to take care of his qianbei. The last actress is from Born to Fly, Zhou Dongyu, who plays the medical doctor Shen Tianran, and she is Lei Yu's love interest. Now, Zhou Dongyu is known to be a really good actress, but in this movie, she becomes like this simpering girlfriend wannabe. She was on screen for such a short time with a very underdeveloped role, which I think is again a sheer waste of talent. I would really have loved to see a little bit more of the development of the relationship between her and Lei Yu, because I thought their chemistry was very good. So I was very impressed by Yibo's performances in these two movies, not because they were perfect, but because I see the real potential there for him to become a very good actor. He needs to break out of playing characters that are very much like his public persona, very reticent, not very responsive, no expression on the face, like Nan Wangji, right? And in order to convince everyone that he can be an actor, he needs to play personalities very different and kind of unexpected and surprising, because that is the essence of acting. So I thought his acting was good, but for those of you out there who are saying that his acting was on par or better than Tony Leung, please stop drinking the Kool-Aid and get a grip. We should be, grounded in a little bit of reality. He's not a great actor yet, he may be getting there, and there's no shame in it. Currently, for Hidden Blade and Born to Fly, while the numbers on social media look very impressive, they're a little bit hollow because they seem to be driven by a lot of fandom frenzy. I've seen multiple accounts of fans who have seen the movies, 10, 20 times in the movies. It's all well and good to love him and support him, but this is not normal behavior. The real mark of success is when people who have no idea who Wang Yibo is watch a movie and come out praising him and praising the movie. That is when he would really have succeeded as an actor. And in fact, a lot of the fandom hype obscures the fact that he is a very talented young actor. What a shame. But I have high hopes for him, and I'm very optimistic about his future. I can't wait for his upcoming film, Really, or One and Only, where he plays a breakdancer in a hip-hop environment. What is with these planes? I hope he shows us a different personality, one that is maybe a little bit more talkative, more energetic, and more vibrant, so that we can see him take one more step to becoming a really good all-round actor. So that's it for my very long review today, and if you're still here, thank you very much for staying with me. If you like my content, then please click like and subscribe. I will be doing one of my regular unboxing videos soon, so see you then. Till next time, take care and stay safe everyone. Bye!